Hello and welcome to this first part tutorial on how to use all of our PCG systems from Imperia's creator tools. So this environment was heavily inspired by a scene by Leo Torres, and the link will be in the description below. And the main purpose of this tutorial is showing you how to use the PCG systems we've created to create a project from start to finish. So this project that you saw at the very beginning was created within an hour by using our tools with a combination of megascans and asset packs. So as you can see on the screen now, we are just creating the landscape and we're sculpting out a bit of water to create our river essentially. And this water plugin is default in Unreal. You simply just have to go to Edit, Plugins and type in water. And the default shader works really well. So let's just continue sculpting our landscape a bit further, and let's start getting some light and fog into our scene as well. So now the landscape's essentially completed at this point, we'll want to drag in the BP large assembly, and you can find a tutorial on this assembly in the link below or on the screen. And the purpose of this large assembly is showing you how to use essentially one asset, and with the procedural systems we can create hundreds of thousands out of the same one, but they'll all have unique visuals to them. So this stone cliff from Megascans looks quite interesting. So we've dragged that in, and you can see the system's now updated. And obviously the low poly assets on the mesh at the moment will need swapping out. So we'll use an asset pack, which will also be in the link to the description below. And in this particular scene, we are using a HDR backdrop, and there's multiple sources to find these online. So we'll head down to our PCG mesh set in the blueprint, and let's go to our asset pack and start by replacing some of these low poly assets. So with these PCG tools, the systems really rely on the asset packs or custom assets the user puts into them. So obviously, the better looking your asset pack, the better looking the system will be. And we've gone for this Mediterranean tree pack, as it works really well and it has lots of nice subsurface scattering on by default. So I won't go over all of the settings in the PCG systems in this video, as we do have individual tutorials on each of the systems we use, but I will briefly comment over what each system does. So currently what we're doing now is we're using this rock and the assembly to essentially create a unique asset which we can then duplicate all around the scene. So as it is procedural, we're able to move this asset and the seed will regenerate, meaning that the asset will not be identical to the original. So we've turned down the assembly points as we don't want meshes spawning on the exterior. And we've just rotated this, and as you can see, the assets scattered on the mesh have been updated as well. So the trees are still facing towards the sun. So now we have one, it's looking quite nice. Let's duplicate that. As you can see, we're using the exact same rock, but we can combine that with the original and we've got a completely unique asset. And on this new system, as you can see, it has individual controls. So if we don't like the look of the new seed, we can always rotate the asset, we can adjust the settings, and this will only affect the new large assembly and not the previous ones. So it can be a really powerful tool to block out large landscapes in a little amount of time. Let's start by dragging some more rocks just to flush this out. That's another useful thing with the system. You don't just have to rely on PCG. You still have the foliage tool and, static meshes. You can always add these in. So if there's something you don't quite like, you can cover it with a rock, or you can add a custom tree. So the PCG systems really allow you to create these types of scene in a short amount of time, but then the custom inputs by the user of actually hand placing assets is really where the scene starts to come to life. So we've now dragged in our PCG holder and spline biome, and the spline biome defines the range for the holder. And once again, we do have a separate tutorial on this, which you can find on screen now. So the combination of the PCG holder and the large assemblies is really where you'll start to see the scene come together, as these systems are all, meant to be used simultaneously. So you can use one system on its own. So if you just wanted a forest, you could just use this biome generator. And if you just needed a large assembly, you could use that one. But it's really the combination of the two which brings it to life. So we're just going to drag this up to our shoreline, and we're going to drag it into these little areas in between our rocks. And it's the same process again. So we'll go into our holder, and we'd go into our mesh sets and start swapping out the low poly ones for the high poly ones. And even without adjusting any settings, you should start to see the scene coming to life. So let's begin by swapping the trees out, as they're going to be the primary detail on this system. So it's a bit too dense at the moment as well, but we'll be able to fix that shortly. So let's just go on to our PCG system, and we're going to lower the density. So that's a bit more believable now, I think. Let's just adjust the scales as well. Let's just play around with the seed to try and get that tree out of the water, and that seems to have worked. Let's just import some grass from Megascans, and let's start swapping this out. So we've just swapped all the other assets out, and now we've got the BP path cut. So we thought it'd be quite nice to have a path cut out of the system. So we're just currently playing around with the path cutout tool, and we'll show you how that works in a moment. So as you can see, the path's now been cut out. And to do that, all you have to do is go on your BP holder, click clean up and generate. And once again, this is also in the other tutorial. So obviously we've got a path now, which is completely cut out, and the ground is looking quite bare. So this is where you can actually use the foliage tool to fill in these gaps. So it was, as I was saying before, you don't just have to rely on PCG. You can use the foliage tool in combination to get the results you're after. So let's start by scattering some smaller rocks in here, just to flush it out and add a bit of extra detail. And let's start by increasing the density. So just built out the rocks on the floor with the foliage tool. And I think we're going to add a couple of boats to the scene just to give it a bit of story. So we've gone for a river that leads to a cove. So, you know, on this cove, maybe it could be related to pirates, or it could be an adventurer who's gone into this cove to explore what's beyond. It really depends what your aim is for your scene to what custom assets you can import in. So even one well-placed asset like this boat can really bring a bit of story to your scene. Let's just fill this cove in a little bit more, just so we get some nice refractions under this water. And there we go, we've filled that in. And we're going to start by placing some individual assets with the foliage tool. And once again, you can use the foliage tool, or you could hand place these assets. So we've created a nice little scene here, but we'll still want to flush this out a bit. So I'm thinking we get this even more large scale. So we're going to start building up the scene even further. So the BP scatter on mesh is a really handy tool. You basically have a mesh and you can scatter on it. So let's swap it out for this tree. And obviously we don't want a fallen tree with trees and grass spawning on it. But what we can do is add ivy to this. And as the points scatter on the top of this fallen tree, the ivy will hang below. So if you just start adding this in a bit further. There we go. So that's the correct ivy now. So we can basically position this wherever we want. So we could have it overhanging to cliffs. We could have it lent up against a rock. We can kind of do what we want with it. And in this scenario, we are just, you know, putting ivy on a fallen over tree. But that scatter on mesh can essentially be used for anything. So you could have a table as an example and scatter books and glasses on it. You can kind of do anything you want with it, essentially. And here we're just tweaking the lighting a bit further to get more of a sunsetty kind of vibe and really bring that foliage out a bit. And obviously, color correction and lighting is really down to the user. It's not a one setting fixes all problem. It really depends on your scene, the time of day you're after. If it's on another planet, then, you know, lighting can change dramatically. Cool. So we've got the lighting how we want it now. And I think it's time to start building up these large scale structures a bit more on the outside. So once again, it's a similar system to we built before, just with a different mesh. And we scaled these up, and we're now going to create some more larger structures on the exterior. And this is really going to help the composition of the scene, as we're really directing the user to look down this river. I think the sense of scale here is coming along nicely. It's looking a lot more interesting than the smaller scene we began with. As you can see, by reducing the skylight, the contrast is even higher now. It's just about finding a right balance. And here we're just editing the material to add a bit more brightness into the trees. And let's just change the hue as well, so we get a bit of color variation. And as you can see, just by changing the hue of one individual tree, we can really start to change the season essentially of this whole scene. So we went from a nice summer environment to kind of like autumn now. So there's plenty of different ways you can, change hues and colors. So you could have a tint on your material, or you can do it this way. It's really down to the user and if you want to keep your original files intact. But yeah, we're just going to repeat this process for all of our assets so they have a bit of color variation. So we're quite happy with this now, I think. It's looking quite nice in our opinion. And let's just go back to our cinematic and see what the final video turned out to be. So we're really looking forward to more videos of a similar nature to this one. So keep an eye out on our YouTube channel and socials for more to come. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.